Welcome to Innovation and Leadership. I'm Jess Larson. Today on the show, we've got Daniel Harmon.
So I think a couple of things. You already mentioned one of the words, just differentiation. Just find out a point of differentiation and focus in on that. If you are teaching, I think, something that is maybe more universal and that might seem like basic knowledge to you or me or your listeners, then if you're going to go down that road...
Thanks for making time.
Thank you for having me, Jess. Excited to be here.
Okay, so for the very rare person who has not seen the Squatty Potty commercials or some of your work, tell people what Harmon Brothers is and some of the campaigns that have been successful you guys have done.
Okay, cool. So I'm Chief Creative Officer at Harmon Brothers. Harmon Brothers is an ad agency, and we've kind of specialized in mixing two different worlds of advertising, the traditional branded world with kind of direct response infomercial world. And usually you think of those as separate categories where, if it's a branded ad, then you're not really doing any kind of a hard sell. You're just trying to make somebody feel something positive about your brand or your product. And then if it's a direct response ad, then you're looking just to buy now, call this 1-800 number, all that kind of stuff. Usually not very inherently interesting stuff. Sometimes the products are, but the way that they communicate that is often pretty yucky.
I was going to say sometimes the mullets are. Sometimes the mullets are highly interesting.
Well, we always say around here that they're only interesting by accident sometimes, which isn't entirely true.
Like a compliment in disguise.
No, yeah, I guess you could say. But basically, we've taken both of those different worlds of branded ads and direct response ads and mixed them together into basically what we have is a Harmon Brothers ad that we are very much focused on getting a return on investment for our clients, that it does close sales immediately and get them money in the bank, and then that it also builds a brand long-term over time. So it's long form ads, mostly on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and the like. And yeah, that's kind of what we do.
So we had Reed Quinn on talking about how you guys got him 30 million views for FiberFix and stuff like this. Can you give some more stats on any of the other campaigns?
You bet. So I think Purple is now north of 400 million views.
That's the mattress company.
That's the mattress company that we actually launched.
Okay.
We also did the branding for them on the launch, and even helped them in the design process of the actual mattress. And so over 400 million views. I mean, they are now have a market cap of I think about $300 million, and so that one's been very successful. Obviously, the Squatty Potty ad, I think across all views through YouTube and Facebook, I think that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 million views. And I'm going to talk here closer into my mic. Thank you, Jess. Let's see. We've also got obviously FiberFix over 30 million views. It's driven a ton of retail as well. The Squatty Potty, the same way, where we had a 600% increase in online sales, a 400% increase in sales in Bed Bath & Beyond for Squatty Potty. It landed them in Costco, which was a huge deal for them. Chat books, where they were able to essentially pay back the investment of their campaign within, it was like 48 or 72 hours, something crazy like that. It was just 2 or 3 days. Jumped them from like 150 in the App Store in the photo and video section all the way to like number, I forget, I think it was like number 17 or something like that in the apps. And it was just massively successful at driving new people into the app and getting people to get books. We have, more recently, we have BedJet that launched over this summer. That one went in the form of a Kickstarter, as well as a just actually selling their old. So a Kickstarter for their new version of the product for their launch, and then also selling their current BedJet. And that one basically doubled their sales, as well as drove 700. I think it's almost $800,000 now on Kickstarter.
So my question with these type of results,
yes,
where typically the world of sales and marketing gets split into the people who do pretty art and the guys who actually bring money in.
Yes.
That merging of it has made you guys really popular. And can you talk about the Harmon Brothers University and how that sold out and what that's all about?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we found kind of our niche there, right? Of being able to do something that's really effective with sales and is also true to our artistic souls. And ultimately, we kind of approach things from the standpoint of sales first, art second. But in our minds here internally, we always say, but it's a close second. Like, we still want it to be something we're really proud of and that we feel is really quality. And with Harmon Brothers University, we developed this course because we have so much overwhelming demand in the marketplace for what we do that we might have. It's literally about 100 to 1 of the number of people that approach us wanting to campaign to the number that we can actually service. And so there's so much unmet demand out there for being able to provide this kind of mixture of direct sales and branding that we basically said, let's educate people on being able to do this. Like, not everybody can afford, like a Harmon Brothers campaign, and that's totally okay. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs, innovators, marketers and stuff that want to be able to do something and make it more effective. And at harmonbrothersuniversity.com, basically, we've developed courses. The first one being How to Write Ads That Sell is the name of the course. And we've opened up our entire playbook. I mean, literally, the motto from the beginning has been hold nothing back. And so we've gone through and taken all the step-by-step principles, all the formulas, all the training techniques, everything that we give to our people internally, and have taken and made it for a course for people that can come in and learn how to do this, how to write ads that sell. And we'll later be adding additional courses to this university, specifically on how to be able to actually produce or create an ad that sells, not just write for it. So everything from, casting, directing, filming, editing, sound design, all that kind of stuff, as well as how to distribute and buy ads so that they sell. And so we'll be adding those courses later on as well.
Well, what I like about it, obviously, word gets out about you guys if people pay X 100,000 for the campaign and then X million in sales happens. Like there's been rumors about you guys for a long time, or at least around here.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So no wonder you're getting that demand. And is it like $3,000? How much is university, the master classes?
Yeah. So it's $3,000.
Yeah.
It isn't open enrollment. There's an application process, and then there's also enrollment periods that we open up. And those aren't, we're letting in tranches of students and then kind of closing it off to make sure we can take care of them, be able to answer their questions in email and things like that as they come up. And it's not just open out there all the time. But if they go to that website, then they'd be able to apply and essentially get on a list to be notified of when the next enrollment starts.
Yeah. What I love about the university, though, is because I like master classes anyways, is the humor. I gotta say, I've made my wife come down, honey, come watch this. And just it's, you guys are, I like that it is, sometimes I find master classes can get into fluff.
Yes.
And I like that it's hard-hitting specifics, quirkiness.
Yes.
Hard-hitting specifics, something funny. And just breaks it up just enough when you're anyways. That's enjoyable as a student. This is your here's your user feedback.
No, that's really great feedback, Jess, because that's been my vision for the course from the beginning, where I feel like when I've gone and taken courses on things like Lynda and on Masterclass and stuff, a lot of the times those are relying on a very specific subject, like, for example, how to edit in Premiere, or it's relying on a very specific celebrity. Like, I'm there to watch Samuel L. Jackson's course on acting, or Ron Howard's on directing, or something along those lines. I'm not a celebrity, at least not nearly to that kind of degree, and we knew we couldn't really rely on that persona. And so we said, let's be really true to ourselves about this and kind of treat it the same way we would any ad. Let's make it really high quality. Let's do a lot of visuals and motion graphics, and things like that, to break things down in a way that are really understandable to people. So it makes things that are complex to be really make them be really simple and understandable. And then let's have fun with it, right? Let's add in our humor, because to my knowledge, I didn't really know of any, at least nothing that I had approached in any kind of a university setting or any kind of a higher education setting at all had kind of come close to that. And so I'm like, this doesn't exist in the world of education. Well, let's make it exist. And so that was kind of what we wanted to do with Harmon Brothers University. It's not just provide real value in the education itself, but in the way that we taught that.
Yeah, it's easier to keep watching it. So obviously, everybody should just go get on the list and get ready to sign up for the university. Everybody go to harmonbrothersuniversity.com. Is that the right?
Yeah, harmonbrothersuniversity.com, yes.
But, so that's the obvious thing here. But what I want to talk about is, for all the people who run a business or are leading an organization, I want to talk about lessons they can learn from what you've done. So,
okay, cool.
I got a really specific question about this. Let's take a quick break from the sponsor for the show, and then I'm going to ask you this.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so Daniel, right before the sponsor break, I was telling you I had a question for you. So we just had on the guys from Contently in New York. Do you know Contently, where they have like New York Times reporters or Wall Street Journal reporters that you can rent?
I know. I'm not super familiar.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So they have these like world-class content creators that you can license through them, and they'll come write your ebook for your company, or they'll come. Okay. So you're getting like Wall Street Journal quality guy to write your blog, so that somebody would actually read it.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Right. And he just talked about this concept of there's so much fluff out there in content, and people like they measure the wrong thing. They measure how many posts did we put on Facebook instead of how high quality was the post we did, right? So it turns into, well, did the 21-year-old intern get enough of them out?
Yes.
Thinking that somehow we're going to win the war in quantity.
Yeah.
But in reality, we live in the information overload age.
Yes.
Right?
Uh-huh.
And their research, they've got some really great research, shows how 5% of content production is getting 95% of the attention these days.
Sure. Uh-huh.
So what I thought was interesting is the way that he phrased kind of the way to win consumers is this idea of teaching them something legitimately valuable.
Okay, yeah.
Don't just put content out.
Yep.
And so where you guys have done that, and I can testify that having going through the Harmon Brothers University myself right now, someone else who, I don't know, maybe they make catalytic converters for diesel trucks. Or, I don't know. Who cares what they do?
Yeah.
Okay. This principle.
I care.
Okay. So this principle of, can I do my clients or potential clients the favor of teaching them something really valuable? Can you talk about the mindset? Because I feel like you guys have accomplished that, and there's probably a lot of other folks that feel they could differentiate from their competition. They could win some love from the consumers if they would get more in tune with what's actually helpful.
Yes.
And because everybody's a subject matter expert on something.
Uh-huh.
Can you talk about if you had to give guidance to somebody in another industry of how they're going to teach in a way that earns some relationship with the potential customer?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things. You already mentioned one of the words, just differentiation. Just find out a point of differentiation and focus in on that. If you are teaching, I think, something that is maybe more universal and that might seem like basic knowledge to you or me or your listeners, then if you're going to go down that road, then find some way to connect it to something really personal, vivid, and emotional. So meaning, if you have a story, a personal story that relates to a universal principle, let's just to pull one out of the sky, just even the golden rule, right? But if you have a way to tell that's different than anybody else with your own story, your own personal experience, and you can make that, it'll become much more emotional that way. If you can tell it in that way, rather than just not bringing anything new to the table. It's always, there's nothing new under the sun in some ways, right? That we're all kind of,
it's just a remix.
Yeah, it's all a lot of remixing out there, and we're as I guess we do that as much as anybody does. Even the concept of a pooping unicorn existed in one form or another before we made it into the Squatty Potty unicorn, right?
I'm going to pause people for just 1 second. for someone who's listening who for somehow has not seen this ad, just go to YouTube and Google Squatty Potty and watch one of the funniest commercials you've ever seen. But you guys have a puppet of a unicorn.
Yes.
That's pooping ice cream. That's like rainbow ice cream that gets given to kids, and it's hilarious because there's the like guy who's dressed up as the knight from medieval times is like handing these rainbow ice cream cones to kids my kids' age, and they think it's all great, right? You're kidding.
One of them was my kid.
That's hilarious. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Game on.
No, yeah.
Wayne's World. Game on.
No, so basically, yeah. So there was a video on YouTube made by Rosanna Pansino. She's a famous. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, but she had this cooking show called Nerdy Nummies. And on there, she had made unicorn poop cookies. And they were just rainbow, really interesting cookies. And so the first idea with it was let's make, what is like poop? Because we had to demonstrate poop in some way. Because the Squatty Potty is a device that, puts you into the squatting position when you're sitting on a toilet for better toilet posture and a healthier elimination. And it makes it so your colon doesn't kink off and all these
such
terrible
great
things.
subject matter for an audio show.
You talk about these things every single week, Jess. I just know it.
Yeah.
This is nothing new for your audience. No. So essentially, we had to delve in this gross area of poop and the colon and all this kind of medical stuff, and we needed a metaphor for it. And then my brother Jeffrey, one of the co-founders of Harmon Brothers, said, "What if we made?" What if we used ice cream? What's like poop but isn't poop? What if we used soft serve ice cream? And so that was kind of the starting point. And then from there, we're like,
makes it hilarious.
Well, all the ice creams I like are like salty, sweet, like chocolatey kind of stuff. No, you just don't go there like at all. That's not a metaphor anymore. Now you're very literal, right? And so it's like, it has to be colorful, right? And then we started thinking, it's got to have some sort of like M&M sprinkles or something along those lines. And then we ultimately kind of fell on this idea of like a nice rainbow stripe to it. And what kind of a creature would produce such a thing? And then the internet told us, logically that's going to be a unicorn because they obviously, when they pass gas, it's rainbows or whatever it was. Like there was all these different elements coming together that we kind of made into our own with that concept.
Yeah. Well, we probably have time for one more question.
Okay.
For this half of the interview. Maybe we'll take a slight tangent. One of my favorite questions is, what's a piece of advice you would have given a younger version of yourself if you could go back?
Yeah. That's a great question. What's a piece of advice that I would have given my younger self if I could go back?
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm not a person that really dwells in the past or like lives with a lot of regrets.
Yeah.
So to speak. I think I'm kind of blessed that way to be just kind of be able to put stuff behind me and move on. And so I would say a piece of advice.
Or just like a lesson you wish you would have learned even quicker because it's been so good to know.
That's a good one. A lesson that I would have learned quicker is that I probably would have learned to... Man, I'm on the spot here. I know I can come up with something, though.
No, it's okay. Is it something about staff? I'd learn how to fire people quickly?
So
is it about fundraising?
So I think this is what I would do, and I would even tell myself now, is that with staff, I think that's a big thing that I would be more apt to try out people... to kind of get ahead of the game when it comes to recruiting talent, rather than sometimes we're reactionary to it. Meaning we kind of wait until there's this like super need, and you don't always have to do that. Like obviously you still want to wait until there's a super need if you're going to hire an employee, but for us as creators, we contract people anyway before we ever dive in any kind of a long-term commitment with them, just to make sure they're working with the team well, they fit into the culture, and all those types of things. And so I would tell myself, be more willing to experiment with different people and just kind of trial and error, where I'm more introverted just by nature. And so when I find somebody that I like, I just kind of, stick with them, get into deep conversations with them. And I'm not as, I don't have the natural inclination to necessarily go out and bring other people into the fold unless I have to. And so that's what I'd say is building that network and contracting those people. And because that's really how you find great people, is just in working with them. And so that's kind of that's a piece of advice I'm trying to live by even more now, and that I would definitely wish that I would have lived by more even in the past.
It's interesting, this idea of dig your well before you're thirsty, right? But I'm not thirsty yet, so I don't have to.
Yes,
it's
kind of it's almost like the innovator's dilemma, for people that have read that book.
Hey, the business is doing great.
Why
would I go invent the business to put myself out of business?
Yes, exactly. And I think it applies to more than just people.
Yeah.
In the way you bring people in, but it also applies to developing, obviously other revenue streams and stuff for your business, that you can't just ever sit and be like, oh, we're good right now.
Yeah.
Without kind of nurturing and developing that next thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, tune in to part 2. We're going to get some more wisdom from Daniel. Thanks, everybody. Well, that's it for the episode. One other thing I wanted to tell you about, if you remember the guys from Convoy in episodes back, Ken Free and Trent Mano, I went on one of their CEO trips to New York, and I met a guy named Brent Thompson, very successful entrepreneur. He was former CEO of Jive Communications, big company now, I think $300 or $400 million. Anyways, he started a new company called blipbillboards.com. I'm super stoked they're a sponsor now. But I remember a year and some ago when I met him, I thought it was genius. Instead of having to buy 6 months or a year's worth of billboard for thousands of dollars, you can buy 8 seconds at a time for like 10 or 20 cents. You pick what billboard you want it on, what time of day you want it to run. And it just puts so much power in the hands of marketers and CEOs who want to try something and see if it works. You can buy as many or as few as you want, change it as many times as you want. I think now our podcast is being advertised on billboards in like 18 different states because we have these guys as sponsors. We're pretty excited about it. Hope you check out blipbillboards.com. Thanks.